So for 5 years, this gentleman was president of our local NAACP chapter. He just told me during the commercial break that Dr. Tia Mills is going to be replacing him now in that post. And 5 years is not that long, man. I thought we were going to have you there for a little while longer. I mean, you know, it only takes up about 18 hours of your day. I mean, come on.
only 18 hours, man. You know, I've been in advocacy now for so long,
Yeah.
right? Probably in my second decade
Yeah.
of like doing this stuff, man, and did a lot of things on the state level too. So it's been a heck of a ride, man. I've enjoyed it.
You know, the last time you were here, we were talking about an issue in Lafayette where an officer was pounding on a young lady who was on the ground at after a party or some neighborhood event that had happened there. And, you know, I told you then that I love your courage. And it's always been fascinating how nuanced you are about these issues. I spoke to Rotary this week, and I talked about the issues that create the potential for criminal activity. You know, lack of resources, lack of knowledge of where resources are, education issues, destructive homes, addictions, all these things. And now people are finally starting to say, well, maybe we should pay some attention to this stuff. You know, after all these years, people are starting to figure it out. But you have been at the forefront of making people understand that issues also of social justice, if not addressed, can create more issues. Talk a little bit about that.
You know, and it's so good to hear people talking about that, right? Because, you know, Clay, back in the day, they were throwing me out of rooms for saying that, right?
Well, you know, all it takes is a few good shootings on Bluebonnet, and then everybody says, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, it's about economics.
Yeah.
And that's typically how it works. But, you know, when you look at the social justice issue, what I've tried to tell people over the years is that if you're not going out to these communities helping people when they feel they need help, they ain't gonna listen to you no other time. People deal with their most essential needs first, or what they deem as their most essential needs first. So I can go out and tell you about shooting each other, but if I ain't gonna come and say nothing about when the police shoot you, then that community doesn't want to hear from me. They're gonna think I'm fake, right?
So, you know, another fascinating thing that I think is, I'm just gonna say it, it's a bit of cowardice. There is nothing that says you are anti-police if you have a problem with corrupt police officers. It's like saying you are an atheist if you have a problem with abusive clergy. It's specious. The argument makes no real sense. It's not anti-cop, it's anti-corrupt cop.
Well, it does make sense when you think about the contextual reference of where it came from, right?
Okay.
You first start to see campaigns like that pop up during the 50s and 60s. And it was a total direct result of integration, right?
Sure.
And mostly school integration, because white moms had fears about their white daughters being impregnated by black boys, so they created stories, right? So since that point, historically, every time you saw historic police reform, you heard about the notion of black on black crime, even though we know that's not a notion, it's crimes of proximity. People kill who look like them.
Right.
That's just the reality. Statistically, that happens, right? So every time since about the 50s or 60s that you've seen historic police reform, the notion of, well, you need to worry about your own communities have come up. And it was once a campaign, but the remnants were so effective that you still see people say it. And because black folks don't read, we'll sit around and say it with them now.
Well, some don't.
Some don't, right?
You know, it's interesting. What's been the toughest thing that you have faced while in that post?
Convincing the folks that you were helping that they needed help. That was probably the most difficult thing to do, right? Because sometimes people, like my grandmother say, cut off their own nose to spite their face, right? Even though you understood the work that you were doing with helping, and sometimes you did work to get black folks in rooms that you weren't even gonna be allowed in on the back half, right? And they wouldn't even know that that was your work that got them in that room.
I understand.
The hardest part about it was convincing the folks that absolutely needed this, that they needed it. And sometimes that came because of the failures of some of the social justice work too, as well as some of the folks that I just think did this work in a bad way.
I want to know in this next this next minute, how much time do we have, Scott? All right, 1 minute. In this next minute, what's next? So I know you're not going anywhere because, you know, we're not letting you get. So what's next?
I'm still gonna be in the fight.
I know you are.
I'm taking a little break here, But I'm gonna be honest with you.
We'll give you a whole 10 minutes.
Whole 10 minutes. No, but I'll be honest with you. Like where I see social justice going, where I see advocacy going, I don't like it. I look at it today. I look at the young advocates and activists coming up. It seems like too many of us are looking for that viral moment rather than actually looking for the goals.
So and you got to come back and talk about that. You got to drop that one on me when I got 30 seconds left in the segment. I do want you to come back and be around there. I have an idea that I want to tell you about offline that I think that you would be essential in making people understand why this investment is so important. Yeah, Eugene Collins. Listen, next week, Paris and Peyton are going to be back to give us an update on what's going on with them. We're going to talk with Matt Moscona about LSU football and Golden Wings. I got a chef coming who's going to make some wings in the studio. Scott can't wait. Back in just a moment.